Scorpio, I need to tell you something important right away. Something big and serious is happening right now, and it's unfolding directly within your spiritual path. This isn't entertainment. It's not a prediction you'll forget. It's a divine alert disguised as a message delivered in perfect timing. What brought you here was not the YouTube algorithm. It wasn't curiosity. You were called. This message was written in your timeline before you knew you'd need it. That pulse of intuition, that sleepless night, those repeating numbers 911, 111, 1015, they weren't coincidences. They were whispers from heaven, guiding you to this very moment. Between October 15th and 16th, 2025, a rare energetic gateway opens. The moon moves through Gemini, stirring subconscious truths, while the sun forms a divine trine with Pluto, your ruling planet. This isn't subtle energy. This is a spiritual wave shaking the very foundation of your transformation. And Scorpio, you're not just standing in its path, you are the vessel it's flowing through. If you've been feeling off balance, mentally overloaded, or emotionally overstimulated, dismiss it. That discomfort is the signal. You are being prepared to confront something you've buried for far too long. And not to relive it, but to release it, finally. The truth is rising. Whether it's about a relationship, a missed opportunity, or a divine purpose you've resisted because fear once had its grip, now is the time to step forward. This is not a call to be perfect. It's a call to be present. Spiritual growth doesn't arrive with trumpets. It shows up in questions that won't go away. It echoes through scripture you randomly hear, through that moment of silence when your heart speaks louder than your mind. The words in Isaiah 40 verse 29 have never been more timely. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. This isn't a metaphor. It's a reminder. You are not being broken. You are being broken open. Let this moment be your sacred pause. Take a breath and feel your feet on the ground. Let your body remember what your soul already knows: you are not alone in this. The spiritual realm has its eyes on you. And what you do next matters. Scorpio, I invite you to mark this moment in time. Drop a comment below and simply write, "I claim this message," or share the angel number you've been seeing. Not just for engagement, but as a declaration of spiritual agreement between you and the universe that you are listening and ready. And if no part of you feels ready, that's okay too. Sometimes, the most courageous thing we can do is show up and stay open. Just know that the next few minutes may shift something deep inside you. That shift will not come from might, will come through you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up with your questions, your quiet hopes, your longing for something real. Every view, every comment, every subscription is not just support, it's alignment. It allows Miracle of the Sign to continue bringing messages like this one to those who need it most. Scorpio, don't go anywhere. You're about to receive insight that could change the way you see your life, your path, and your power. Something big and serious is happening, and you're standing at the threshold. Let's walk into it together. Scorpio, if you're still here, it's because your soul recognizes that something is unfolding not outside of you, but through you. And to understand the depth of this moment, we have to listen not only to what's happening in the sky, but also to what's being stirred within your spirit. Between October 15th and 16th, the moon's passage through Gemini invites a highly active mental state, where thoughts flutter like leaves in the wind. You may feel torn between logic and instinct, clarity and contradiction. But this is not confusion. This is revelation in motion. Gemini is the mirror, and when the moon walks through it, it reflects the many sides of you that are often hidden, neglected, or doubted. It's in this reflective space that your intuition sharpens, not because everything makes sense, but because something deeper begins to resonate beneath the noise. Simultaneously, the Sun forms a rare and transformative trine with Pluto, your ruling planet. This is not just an astrological event, it's a sacred recall. Pluto doesn't whisper. It digs, it resurrects, it brings the past forward, not to punish you, but to complete something unfinished. And when the Sun illuminates Pluto's domain, the light enters the most shadowed corners of your experience. Memories may return. Old fears may stir. Dreams might become strangely vivid, almost prophetic. You may find yourself waking up with your heart racing, unsure why. Or noticing the same number patterns on clocks, receipts, license plates 911, 111, 1015, as if the universe is spelling something out just for you. It is. This is the energy of spiritual confrontation, not to break you, but to awaken you. What you've avoided, denied, or simply weren't ready to face, now stands at the threshold of your consciousness, asking not for drama, but for acknowledgement. And so the emotional unrest you may feel now is not a signal of something wrong, but a doorway opening. You are not unraveling. You are being invited to see clearly. Just like when light enters a dusty room, it doesn't create the dust, it reveals it. And once seen, it can be cleared. In this sacred moment of planetary alignment, your healing does not come from avoiding the discomfort, but from walking into it with a spirit of honesty and grace. Ask yourself gently, what am I still holding that no longer fits who I'm becoming? Is it a grudge, a fear, an old narrative that kept you safe but small? Is it a self-image built on someone else's expectations? Whatever it is not you anymore. And like old luggage at the door of a new home, it must be placed down so you can cross the threshold fully present, fully available to what is next. This is the soul work of October's midpoint, the recognition that you cannot step into your next chapter with the weight of stories that no longer serve you. And yet, this is not a command to rush, or to tear anything apart. It is a permission to release. Like the leaves that fall in autumn, letting go is part of the sacred rhythm. There is no shame in it. Only liberation. And if you're wondering how to begin, start by noticing what you resist feeling. Start by being honest about what still triggers you, what still holds emotional weight. That is where the release wants to happen. And here, in the stillness between celestial movements, in the honesty of self-awareness, is where you plant the seeds of something holy. Scripture tells us that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. That nearness isn't just in comfort, it's in clarity. As the skies shift, so do you. Not through force, but through surrender. So Scorpio, this isn't about changing who you are. It's about shedding what you no longer need in order to return to who you've always been. A transformation doesn't begin when things feel perfect. It begins when you say yes in the middle of the mess. And this moment, this very alignment, is your invitation. To reflect. To release. And to rise. Scorpio, after walking through the shifting tides of astrological energy, you now arrive at a threshold that requires not just awareness, but courage. The stars may whisper, but the tarot speaks in symbols that reach into the marrow of your being. And in this moment, two cards rise from the deck not as random images, but as sacred mirrors, the Moon and the Knight of Swords. Their message is not subtle. It is urgent, raw, and deeply transformative. The Moon is not a card of clarity. It is a card of shadows, of feelings that defy logic, of truths that have been long buried because they were too heavy to carry, or too fragile to speak. When the Moon appears, it does not demand immediate understanding. It invites you into a space where knowing comes through sensing, through feeling, through allowing. This is not the truth you can explain to others. It's the kind you carry in your chest, the kind you dream about in pieces, the kind you try to outrun in your waking life. And yet, the Moon never chases. It waits. And when you are still enough, it begins to rise in you, soft and glowing, illuminating what you didn't want to see but have always needed to. But this is not a moment to simply sit in the fog of intuition. That's where the Knight of Swords enters like a rush of wind through a stagnant room. He is focused, fearless, and unafraid to cut through illusion with the sword of direct action. This energy does not wait for permission. It is the part of you that already knows. The version of yourself that has grown tired of second-guessing and is ready to move. The Knight's presence beside the Moon is powerful, because it says, yes, there is something hidden. Yes, there is fear. But no, you are not meant to stay in the dark. You are meant to act, even if your voice trembles. You are meant to speak the truth you've been carrying. You are meant to move toward the conversation you've avoided, the decision you've delayed, the calling you once silenced. This pairing is a divine contradiction, one card asking you to feel what is unspoken, the other pushing you to name it and do something about it. And in this contradiction lies your breakthrough. So often in life, we wait for the perfect clarity before we move, but what if clarity is what arrives after movement? What if knowing begins only after the first step? You don't need to fix everything at once. You only need to stop hiding from the truth that's already knocking inside your chest. That knock? It's not coming from outside of you. It's your soul, asking to be seen again. Not in theory, but in action. This moment is not just about healing old wounds. It's about breaking the agreement you made with fear to keep them hidden. And the healing won't come just by understanding where the pain began. It comes when you say, even though I don't have it all figured out, I choose to move forward anyway. There's power in that decision. Power that activates the law of attraction not as a wish, but as a command. When you align your words, thoughts, and actions with your deeper truth, the universe responds not with miracles out of nowhere, but with the right people, places, and opportunities rising to meet your momentum. So Scorpio, if your heart has been stirring, if your spirit feels restless and your body carries tension you can't explain, this is the moment you've been sensing. You don't have to know everything. But you do need to listen. If this reading is awakening something inside you, don't let it pass. Write it in the comments, I'm ready to face the truth. Say it not for me, but for yourself. There is no shame in not having acted before. There is only power in choosing to act now. What part of you is asking to be freed? And what truth is finally asking to be lived? The night is already moving. The moon is already rising. You are not behind, you are exactly on time. Scorpio, as you continue navigating the sacred path opened by this astrological alignment, The rhythm of the universe deepens its conversation with you this time, through numbers. Not just as symbols or coincidences, but as carriers of encoded wisdom, patterns of divine design that mirror your inner state and invite reflection. Numerology is not about superstition. It's about resonance. And during October 15th and 16th, the vibrations of the numbers 6 and 7 come forward, not to predict your future, but to guide your healing and awakening from within. The energy of the 15th reduces to the number 6, a vibration long associated with harmony, care, and the spiritual responsibility of emotional healing. 6 is the number of the nurturer, the one who tends to the unseen wounds in others while often forgetting their own. But this time, the call is inward. 6 invites you to pause and ask, where in my life have I been giving more than I've been receiving? Not out of blame, but from compassion. This number reminds you that self-neglect is not humility, and ignoring your needs is not a spiritual badge, it's a distortion of what love is meant to be. You were not created to carry the world alone. You were meant to live in alignment, in reciprocity, in sacred balance. The day that follows October 16 shifts us into the vibration of 7, the number of spiritual depth, divine intelligence, and inner truth. While 6 asks you to heal, 7 asks you to understand. This is the number of introspection, of soul searching, of peeling back the layers until only what is real remains. And that kind of clarity isn't always comfortable. It requires you to sit with questions that don't have immediate answers. It demands the maturity to stay present through uncertainty, to befriend silence rather than fill it. That is the true essence of awakening, not more knowledge, but deeper knowing. Not more doing, but wiser being. Together, these 2 days unfold like a story. On the first day, you tend to the wound. On the second, you extract its wisdom. But healing is not a race, and awareness is not a reward, it's a responsibility. You may find yourself asking, who still holds space in my heart that I haven't forgiven? Or even more courageously, have I truly forgiven myself? These are not simple reflections. They're soul work. And sometimes the most honest answers come not in words, but in tears, in the breath that softens your chest, in the release of something you've held for too long. If you're feeling lost right now, Scorpio, if life feels like it's pulling you in directions you can't yet name, know this: you are not failing. You are deepening. There is nothing wrong with needing rest. There is nothing weak about needing time. What's dangerous is pretending you don't. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be witnessed. And perhaps the person who most needs to witness your truth is you. That's why this moment matters. Because it's not about speed. It's about presence. And healing doesn't require you to do anything more than honor what is already asking to be seen. So I invite you to sit with this journal prompt today, not as an exercise, but as a doorway. What question is life asking me to answer right now? Write it without judgment. Let it lead you. Sometimes, the act of putting a question on paper is the very act that begins to call in the answer. You are not in the dark because you're lost. You are in the dark because you're planting something new. And seeds don't grow under spotlights, they grow in stillness. Scorpio, you are not behind. You are on holy ground. These numbers are not just dates. They are coordinates of transformation. Trust that. Move slowly, move honestly, but move. And as you do, let the vibration of 6 hold you in compassion, and the wisdom of 7 lift you into clarity. You're not meant to stay in the shadows. You're meant to rise from them. Scorpio, what has been stirring beneath the surface is no longer content to remain hidden. After moving through the internal tides of feeling and memory, and after being called to question the patterns of your own heart, you now stand at the moment of the call. This is where the Judgment card enters, not with punishment, not with fear, but with the unmistakable vibration of awakening. Judgment is not about being judged. It's about being summoned. And you, Scorpio, are being summoned by your own destiny to return to the version of you that you've outgrown and choose deliberately, consciously to become who you were always meant to be. This card doesn't arrive when everything is easy. It arrives when something inside you is too alive to ignore. When the silence becomes louder than noise. When the pressure to stay the same becomes more painful than the fear of change. The energy of judgment doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for permission. Not from the world. From you. The metaphor here is not dramatic, it's deeply personal. The gate to your future doesn't open with effort. It opens with your yes. Your full-hearted, eyes wide, trembling voice yes. Not because you know exactly where it leads, but because staying where you are is no longer aligned with who you are. There is a quiet but powerful truth in realizing that you don't need to see the whole path. You only need to take the next honest step. That's all the universe ever requires of you. And yet, that first step can often feel the heaviest because it asks you to release the illusion of control. It asks you to trust not the road, but the rhythm. The same rhythm that keeps your heart beating, that guides the tides, that brings day after night, now pulses through you with a message: move. And not just physically, emotionally, mentally, energetically. The stagnation you feel is not failure. It's the space between who you were and who you're becoming. Perhaps you've delayed a decision, not because you were uncertain, but because you were afraid of what would happen once you chose. But the delay itself carries weight, and over time, that weight becomes its own kind of burden. So I invite you now to listen not with your mind, but with your soul. What is the one thing you've known deep down you need to do, but haven't? Maybe it's a conversation, a boundary, a goodbye, or a beginning. Whatever it is, write it down. Not tomorrow. Now. And give yourself 48 hours to honor it in action, even if that action is just one brave phone call, one moment of truth, one door finally closed or finally opened. The choice you make now sets off a ripple that reaches farther than you can imagine. This is how timelines shift. This is how energy realigns. You were never waiting on a sign. You were waiting on your own readiness to respond. And you are ready. Not because you feel brave, but because you feel called. That calling isn't loud. It's steady. It might sound like exhaustion, or a gut instinct, or a voice that simply says, enough. Whatever it sounds like to you, trust it. You don't need the map. You need momentum. There is a sacred strength in choosing yourself, not from ego, but from alignment. When you say, I choose to move forward, you don't just break a pattern, you begin a new one. And if that speaks to you, let it echo outward. Leave it in the comments as a personal contract with your becoming. I choose to move forward. Say it out loud. Write it down. Let that choice carry weight. Let it have breath. The Judgment card doesn't come to remind you of what you lack. It comes to show you what you already are, capable, evolving, and chosen not by fate, but by your own willingness to rise. You don't need a lightning bolt. You need a moment of truth. And that moment is now. Scorpio, by now you've felt the weight and wonder of this moment, the celestial alignments, the messages of the tarot, and the soft yet persistent stirrings of your inner knowing. But none of that matters if it doesn't translate into how you show up each day in your body, your relationships, your choices, and the rhythms of your life. The invitation of this season is not just to awaken spiritually, but to embody that awakening in tangible, compassionate action. It's time to choose responsibility not as a burden, but as a path back to alignment. And that begins, always, with your physical and energetic well-being. The influence of Pluto, your ruling planet, can be deeply transformative but also intensely draining. This isn't the kind of exhaustion that a nap can fix, it's the weariness that comes from internal reconstruction. If you've been feeling emotionally frayed, mentally foggy, or physically tense, this is your cue to pause and nourish your nervous system. Magnesium and B-complex vitamins can help stabilize your inner rhythms, especially when your energetic field is processing major shifts. But more than supplements, what you truly need is space. 5 minutes each morning to sit in stillness, breathe slowly, and listen to the quiet within you. This isn't about escaping your responsibilities, it's about preparing your body to meet them with clarity. Pay attention to your environment, too. If your meals have been rushed or imbalanced, bring in more greens, not just for your physical health, but because green resonates with the heart chakra. Eating with presence, even something simple like a crisp apple or a fresh salad, can ground your energy in a way that invites emotional ease. Try reducing caffeine just for a few days and notice how your body responds. You might be surprised how much clarity emerges when your system isn't stuck in overdrive. In the realm of work and finances, this is a window of recalibration. Feeling lost or misaligned in your career doesn't mean you've failed at it, simply means you've outgrown a framework that no longer fits. Just like a plant that needs to be repotted, you may need new soil, new structure, and more space to grow. Review your financial habits with honesty, not judgment. If you're tempted to jump into high-risk decisions around October 15-16, pause. Ask yourself, am I moving from fear or from faith in my future? A new opportunity may arise soon, one that challenges your comfort zone, but don't reject it too quickly. Just because it feels unfamiliar doesn't mean it's unsafe. In matters of love, this is a sacred time to assess connection through the lens of truth, not nostalgia. If someone from the past returns, don't automatically invite them back into your heart. Ask yourself, does this connection align with who I've become? What do I feel in my body when I think of them, expansion or contraction? For those who are single, your intuition is sharp now. You don't need to chase anything. The right energy will meet you. You'll feel it in your chest before your mind even knows why. On October 16th, try wearing deep blue or purple tones that help you anchor your energetic boundaries while inviting soulful connection. If all of this feels overwhelming, return to something simple but profound. Write a letter to the version of you that already knows what to do. The you that has already said yes to healing, to growth, to the life you're slowly stepping into. Let them speak back. Let them remind you how far you've come. You don't need a plan to move forward. You just need a relationship with the part of yourself that already believes it's possible. This season isn't asking you to be perfect. It's asking you to be present. And in that presence, your choices become prayers, your routines become rituals, and your life becomes the living proof that healing is not just something you think about, it's something you practice, one breath, one boundary, one brave yes at a time. Scorpio, if you've made it here, to the closing moments of this sacred message, then something inside you has already shifted. Not because of what I've said, but because your soul was ready to receive it. And now, standing where you are, perhaps with a heart still trembling or a mind full of questions, I want to remind you of something simple, yet utterly profound. You are not the victim of your fate, you are the architect of your becoming. You were never meant to surrender your power to fear, to the past, or to the expectations that no longer resonate with who you're becoming. Your future does not live in predictions. It lives in the choices you make from this moment on. Maybe something deep within you has already whispered, "It's time." Maybe you've felt it all along, the nudge to release what no longer serves you, the pull to move toward what's uncertain but aligned, the quiet ache to return to the version of yourself you buried beneath survival. Whatever brought you here, it was never random. This isn't about changing who you are. It's about remembering who you've always been. You are the light. And no matter how long you've felt disconnected from that truth, the light never left you. It simply waited for your yes. So I ask you gently, but firmly, what will you do with what you've learned today? What small step can you take in the next 24 hours that honors your growth? Will you speak the truth you've been avoiding? Will you choose to rest when you've been forcing yourself to push? Will you write that letter to your future self, or start the journal you've been meaning to keep? What action would feel like love toward the person you're becoming? And more importantly, are you ready to give yourself permission to begin? If even one part of today's message resonated with you, I invite you to declare it. Not for me. For you. Leave a comment below and share one thing you're committed to doing after this video ends. Or simply write, "I'm ready to open the door." When you write it, something in the universe responds, not because you typed a phrase, but because you chose to make it real. Every comment, every share, every like is more than digital feedback, it's an energetic seed, a ripple that echoes into the field of possibility. And here at Miracle of the Sign, this community exists to hold space for that transformation, for the miracle you've been quietly praying for. Thank you for showing up today, not just by watching this video, but by listening to yourself. Your time, your energy, and your presence mean more than you know. You've just honored your own healing by choosing to be here. So please consider subscribing if you haven't, and sharing this message with someone whose soul may be in need of a reminder. You never know what healing your courage might unlock in someone else. And before we part, allow me to offer a quiet prayer on your behalf. May you be guided to exactly where you're meant to be. May clarity find you in the moments you least expect it. And may you always remember that no matter how dark the road has felt, your light was never extinguished, only hidden for a time. You are not alone. The door has been waiting. And now, you are the one who holds the key. So go ahead. Take a breath. Then take the step. The rest will rise to meet you.